Hi, everybody, and welcome to our final Studio Live event of 2024. I'm Pete Saburn, the CEO of StudioSpace. I'm going to be your host today, and I'm really excited about this session. We're going to be revealing a bit of a StudioSpace exclusive, and we've also got a wonderful panel of incredible experts lined up for you. So it's going to be quite a power hour. So fasten your seatbelts, folks, and I hope you enjoy it. Before we dive in, a bit of housekeeping. If you have questions, we'd love to hear from you. So please write your questions in the chat or in the Q&A box as and when you think of them, and we'll come back to them with our panelists later in today's session. So first off, we're going to kick off the session today by looking back at 2024 with a focus on what the data from the StudioSpace platform tells us. This is real data based on real briefs that big brands have shared with our incredible agencies, and we're going to be revealing the most in-demand capabilities for 2024 and also sharing what's inside some of these big brand briefs. I'll take you through the intro. We're going to kick off the session with that look back, a little bit of focus on what the data is telling us. And we're also going to be joined by 4 amazing speakers and panelists from our agencies, all of them at the cutting edge of marketing, leaders in their field. And we're really spoiled for choice, obviously, about who we can introduce to you today. We've got some fantastic speakers for you, and they're going to be sharing their specialist insights from 2024 within their own categories, and also their hottest predictions for 2025. So let's have a quick introduction to each of our panelists. I wonder if you could give us a wave, folks, and maybe introduce yourselves. Let's run through the list there. We've got Jeff, Veronica, Naomi, and Ollie. So maybe we'll go through in that order. Jeff, I wonder if you could introduce yourself.
Everyone. Yeah, pleasure to be here. I'm Jeff, CEO of Built Visible, so a specialist organic digital marketing agency. And we exist to deliver brand and business growth through search-based customer journeys, through the smart application of data, SEO, content.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Veronica, let's hear from you.
Hi, I'm Veronica, MD of Impact Sense. We are a disruptive research business. We do all sorts of consumer insights, and our goal is to bridge the gap between insight and application, because not as much research is actionable or being actioned as much as it should.
Very good. Thanks, Veronica. Naomi, over to you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Naomi from creative agency Mr. President, and excited to share with you today our highlights of 2024 and then our predictions.
Brilliant. Last but not least, Ollie.
Amazing. Yeah, so I'm Ollie. I'm very proud to be CEO of Nonsensical, and we do TikTok so you don't have to. And that's it.
Nice. Thanks, everybody. Really looking forward to hearing more from each of you in a few minutes, and also the Q&A towards the end of the session to get your views on the questions from our audience. So by the end of this session, you should be able to walk away with a great understanding of where CMOs are choosing to invest for growth, and have plenty of ideas for your own business to help you hit the ground running in 2025. But we're going to start with a bit of a StudioSpace look back on 2024, which, you know, we're coming towards the end of quite a big year, I think you'll agree. Massive changes in the political scene. They've had a major impact on people and the economy. We had that huge global IT outage in the middle of the year. And it's been a huge year, of course, for AI. It's been everywhere. Amazing to see the progress of this technology every week, and new developments. Even this week, the likelihood of an age group restriction on social media in several parts of the world, including Australia, looking more and more likely. Pretty exciting year for the marketing community. So with hundreds of briefs running through our StudioSpace marketplace, we've got a really quite a unique view of what's in demand and the types of marketing services, and an overview of the types of projects that big brands are investing in. And that's what we're going to delve into in this short presentation before we hear from our panelists. Where are marketers spending their budgets? What are the most in-demand services? And we've got a year's worth of data on the StudioSpace platform to be able to share with you. But before we reveal the most popular briefs, we've got a few updates of StudioSpace's highlights for the year. We've welcomed lots of new brands to the platform, including First Central, Just Group, City & Guild, City Fibre, AF Blakemore, Allianz, Text Help, some superb companies, I'm sure you'll agree. And we've seen a big jump in the use of StudioSpace from our more established clients like Google, Aviva, News Corp, HSBC, JLR, MA Financial, and L&G, to name a few. We've invested significantly in our platform throughout the year, enabling a joined-up digital experience from brief through to invoice. And we've launched many new products and feature updates. Our agencies now total over 380 companies, and they cover dozens of categories of services. But ultimately, StudioSpace, it's all about the work. It's the work that our clients and our agencies have done together, and it's been breathtaking this year. There are far too many projects to name every single one, but I'm really proud to share some of the most exciting examples of projects that we've matched through the StudioSpace platform in 2024. And as you can see, there's a real breadth here. Together, you've developed new brands, new ventures, and new digital products. You've launched on new platforms like TikTok, and you've used existing platforms in brand new ways. You've created accelerator programs, venture studios. You've innovated with AI in green technology and with health tech. And you've delivered countless new campaigns, social, search, CRM, and even some in real life. And through this work, you've built the biggest, the fastest growing, and the most diverse community of agencies in the world. And that is StudioSpace. So thank you for delivering that contribution. You've made an exceptional contribution to building the business. So what's been most in demand in 2024? Well, every month, and I'm sure some of you have had this spam in your inbox every month throughout this year, we release a report called The Marketer's Most Wanted, which reveals the most in-demand briefs for that specific month through our platform. And this year's been fascinating because there's been loads of changes in that top 10 from one month to another. It's really competitive every month. Some of our long-standing front-runner categories like UX, design, and UI have been knocked down the table in certain times, and we've had new entries coming in each month. But with so much movement in the monthly reports, we're quite excited to reveal the league table for the whole year of 2024. We've got an exclusive for you. We're revealing the most in-demand categories by volume and also showing where big brands have allocated budgets in 2024. So we're looking at value as well. So without further ado, let's reveal the most in-demand briefs for 2024. And as you can see, our top 10, and there are dozens of categories that haven't even made the top 10, by the way, is really quite broad ranging. And it's a different picture from 2023. We've got some big drops. For example, UX and UI moving from first place down to 6th in 24, and proposition design dropping from 4th to 9th place. And we've looked up the numbers on this, looking behind the numbers, and we're actually, it's not that there's been a drop in the number of briefs with the number of UX and UI, for example. It's actually increased. But what's happened is there's been huge growth in other categories and total number of briefs, meaning that these have been pushed down the table relative to one another. We've also had a couple of new entries into the top 10. You can see that digital marketing and research and insight, interestingly, have made the top 10 for the first time this year. So let's talk a little bit more about the top 5 most in-demand categories that are dominating the volume this year. So in 5th place, we've got software development, and that's bumped 3 places up from 8th last year. And we're seeing particular demand for web development, app development projects, and particularly among the sort of medium-sized as well as B2B companies who are investing in technology in this area. Moving to 4th, we've got SEO and PPC. So this category has been up and down the table like a yo-yo this year. So it's interesting to see that actually it's landed overall in 4th place for the full year data set. And the majority of briefs are for SEO, for search, where brands are wrestling with their Google rankings. There's been some big updates from Google this year, and we're looking to hearing more from Jeff, who's actually the expert on this area in the world of SEO, and perhaps why this category could be one to watch for 2025. So in 3rd place, we've got research and insight. And this category was only in 8th place at the start of the year. It dropped out of the top 10 in March, but has since re-entered that chart from April and has resurgence with strong and consistent growth since the summer. And we're particularly seeing demand for projects that are exploring customers' appetite and consumers' appetite for new products and services. And we've seen a real mixture of quant and qual methodologies, different techniques, different technologies that people are using to conduct their research. And we're looking forward to hearing from Veronica in a moment about the latest trends in research and why there's no sign that this category is going to slow down. So our runner-up in the top 10 is creative and production. And this category covers both the sort of smaller initiatives like seasonal photo shoots or additional content to much larger full ad campaigns. And we've seen an increased demand for AI to create a multitude of new assets very efficiently, giving clients more bang for their buck. And with most areas of marketing, return on investment has been key. And we're finding that our agencies are bringing really strong commercial focus, are doing well in our matching process here. Mr. President is one such agency, and we're going to hear from Naomi in a moment, her thoughts on what's next in the creative and production category. And that leaves our top spot. We have social and content, and social has been top of our monthly marketers wanted consistently this year. So it's no surprise that we're seeing it right up there for the year in total. And clients love using our specialist social media agencies, whether it's for upfront social strategy, whether it's about always on support to manage their different platforms and channels, whether it's launching on new platforms, or if it's about creating and executing really impactful campaigns. We're looking forward to hearing from Ollie from Nonsensical in a few minutes about what we can learn from 2024 in social and what's next in this ever-evolving category. So that wraps up the volume look at the categories for 2024. Let's have a look at now how people have spent their budgets. So what is the 10 most invested categories in 2024? And it's a slightly different story, as you can see from the volume. UX and UI actually leads here. It's primarily driven by some larger digital transformation programs that require top UX and UI resource, both design and development resource, to work alongside internal teams for quite an extended period of time. And therefore the budgets for this category are still very strong, and there's lots of investment going into this area. Digital marketing campaigns continue to be an area for investment for our clients, and we expect to see this category to continue growing in 25. However, the kind of biggest shift, I suppose, or theme for the year that we've seen in spend has been, versus the previous year, lots of investment in more strategic projects, foundational projects around insight, around research, around strategy formulation and planning. Earlier in the year, there was kind of hesitancy to spend on these new things. There was a lot of pressure on interest rates, as you'll remember, and budgets were very hard to come by. Since then, we've seen brands, rather than locking down to purely core business, there's now a refocus on growth, particularly in the second half of this year, which has been really encouraging, I think, for everybody on this call. So now, as with the demonstrated by the US election, we never quite know what the future has in store, but we're predicting that focus on growth will continue into the new year in 2025. But watch this space and let's see how it goes. So that concludes our 2024 look back. We're now going to hear from our pioneering leaders in agencies across our 4 most popular categories, and that's creative, social, research, and SEO. And we've asked each agency leader to share their highlights from 2024 and to share some of their predictions for 2025. So now I'd like to introduce Jeff from Built Visible, who's going to be the first agency to take the stage this morning. Built Visible, all about meaningful connections between people, communities, and brands through the smart application of data, SEO, and content. And we'll let Jeff tell us a little bit more about his experience of 2024 and some of his predictions and forecasts for 2025. So Jeff, over to you.
Cool, thanks, Peter. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting seeing those results, like seeing SEO coming and going up, as you say, a bit like a yo-yo across the year. I think that represents where SEO is at the moment. So Liz, we can go to the next slide. I think the common issue to set the scene is that SEO is often typically seen as a bit of a black box. It kind of sits between brand and performance. It needs to speak the language of performance and be attributable, but it needs to amplify and not sort of hamper the brand. And we kind of sit in the middle and try and really join those two things together and drive outcomes for clients. And I think the past few years has been kind of a perfect economic storm where people are trying to invest intelligently. They're trying to commit to the long term, but they're aware of the short term. And so 2024 has been kind of an interesting culmination. I think a little bit of a turning point, perhaps. So Liz, if we can go to the next slide. What we've seen in terms of SEO is that there's been a huge drive to commercialize the value of it. So because it's this kind of perceived as this black box kind of channel where typically senior marketers will come from performance or a brand background, they're not coming from an organic background. We've been doing a lot of ground up SEO conversations. So really going into organizations, helping them understand, okay, what is the value here that we can drive, like making sure that their actual business is set up properly to drive organic value because it's so cross-functional across departments. And then putting in place measurement frameworks and attribution models that actually mean something. So SEO is kind of the worst for kind of proxy KPIs that don't really mean anything. So we've been doing a huge amount of work with brands in 2024, and particularly through you guys with StudioSpace, to put these things in place and make sure that we're really, really articulating what the value is from organic. So we're kind of bridging that brand performance divide, and most of the briefs typically start around organic growth. That's typically what people are looking for, somewhat inevitably, and they kind of invest and it stalls and they try again. But actually the really exciting stuff this year has been about how we can help reduce CPAs. That is just the common issue that every single CMO has, and SEO can play such a huge part in making that happen. So loads of interesting conversations there. And also just helping brands understand that they need to invest in SEO to protect what they have as well as grow, and kind of doing some really interesting work with brands to separate those two ideas out. Because it's not just like performance marketing where you can turn it off and it stops, turn it back on and it goes again. It's a bit like an oil tanker. So helping brands understand what that looks like. And then finally, we've been doing some really interesting stuff around just, again, commercializing work streams. So instead of having tactical, on-site content or link building or technical SEO as tactical channels, we've been kind of bringing those things together to work with clients to essentially integrate it better with the way they might execute other initiatives in their marketing. So we call them named project workflows, but they're super simple to understand. They talk the language of the rest of the business, and it kind of elevates SEO to be a bit more useful and tangible for marketers. So that's kind of been a lot of what we've been doing in 2024. I think it's this interesting turning point because economically things are beginning to perhaps turn around, we hope. So yeah, we're kind of leaning into that and making sure it's super valuable. So in terms of what's coming, Liz, if we can just skip forward very briefly. So we've got a few sort of predictions. I think number one, the rise of brand SEO. So we're seeing more and more that if you are an authoritative brand, Google likes you. We know that there were some leaks in 2024 that literally show us that in Google's code. So we've kind of done some really interesting testing around that stuff. But one of our big recommendations for brands in 2025 is to dedicate full work streams to brand SEO, not just the non-brand side of things. In terms of the way people are searching, we know that Google is diversifying the entire time. All they ever want to do is serve users the most diverse, useful result for what they're searching for. We know that you know, they surface a lot of video, TikTok, all this kind of thing, but also we're having lots of conversation with brands at the moment about thinking beyond Google. So how are people discovering your brand in other search engines? So YouTube, TikTok, et cetera, and especially if targeting Gen Z and younger people, like that, they do not necessarily go to Google to begin with. So helping brands to adapt there, I think, is going to be a huge part of what we're doing next year. And then finally, AI, it's like the biggest buzzword. Everyone's probably going to talk about it, but we warn very heavily against just scaling your content production massively with AI for SEO purposes. And so we're doing lots of work at the moment on the operational side. So we think AI is going to be hugely helpful for implementation, for testing, and just helping clients get their head around how they can use AI to, especially with agencies, free up, you know, as a specialist, free up our minds to be able to think rather than do. And that's a huge part of what we're looking at for next year as well. So in a slide that has not survived the transition from PowerPoint to Google Slides, we have these recommendations and a few more actually in a white paper that's not yet live. So if you want sort of exclusive access to that, like, please just drop me an email. We'll fire it over. I think it's going to go live next week. But yeah, it's an exciting time ahead for SEO, and yeah, huge opportunities for brands, we think, coming in the near future.
Thanks, Jeff. Fascinating. A couple of points maybe to pick up that you mentioned there. We're also seeing that commercial impact. It's something that's reiterated time and time again, needing to demonstrate the value and to measure the value and to see the impact of the work that you're doing, and more integrated into project workflows, as you say. Fascinated by the thoughts around implications of changes at Google, but also in the wider market beyond Google is a good thought around that. And then, yeah, not surprised to see the AI implications, but maybe as you suggest, more about operational benefits, more about freeing up time for creation rather than it being that kind of threat of replacing you know, the role of the creator in this. So thank you so much for sharing in a very short space of time your thoughts from last year and the year ahead. Jeff, that's fantastic. We'll come back to you with some questions, no doubt, in a few minutes. So really looking forward now to hearing from Veronica from Impact Sense next. Impact Sense have carved out quite a reputation for themselves, one of the leading research and insight agencies. And one of the things we like about them is their strategic thinking and the fact that they challenge this sort of traditional market research model. So, you know, as disruptors in their own category, we're looking forward to hearing more from Veronica about thoughts of highlights of 2024 and also predictions for what's coming. So Veronica, over to you.
Thank you, Pete. Cool. So if we go to the next slide. Yeah. So I'd have to say a big highlight is, of course, like seeing a rise in strategic research in the last 12 months, like clients wanting to understand more about their audiences and tap into new audiences versus just doing things like testing or doing some form of like campaign measurement. If we go to the next slide. But what's been the biggest highlight for us is seeing the change that we've seen in the last 12 months. We think we've seen more change in the last year than we have in the last decade. And obviously that is due to the fact that tech and AI has helped us. But we've been experiencing the same challenges for a long time, and now we're starting to be able to tackle them. Go to the next slide. So these are the three things that we think, you know, from our perspective, we've seen change in, and we've been able to tackle challenges. So the first is turning actionable research into actioned research. And actionable research is something that everyone talks about, but it's actually quite easy to do. You really only need to set like some recommendations that's come out of the insight, but to get it actioned is a lot harder. And the second is creating richness but at scale. So getting qual level insights at quant scale, and to be able to blend those and get the benefits of both in one approach without having huge cost implications is a big change. And then the third is, I wouldn't call this one so much a highlight, and it's a bit more controversial, so I'm going to tackle this in a second, but getting like real authentic participation out of research, because we've been having a massive challenge with that for years and it hasn't really been talked about very much. So we go through the first one. So yeah, to be able to get to actioned research, you really need to be able to like genuinely immerse stakeholders, and often stakeholders haven't been involved in the delivery process, or possibly not even in the commissioning of the work. And so it's a big job to get them immersed into it, especially in strategic research. And then to be able to provide tools to be able to interact with it on an ongoing basis. So what you're looking at here is an example of how you can take something like segmentation and pull it into chat so that stakeholders can interact with it and they get the answers to what they're needing at the challenge that they're having at the time, there and then. So to be able to say, tell me about these 6 different segments and tell me how they respond to this. And can you help me understand this by creating a mood board around this profile so I understand what kind of things they care about? This is the kind of thing that we haven't been able to do previously, because a lot of these segmentation briefs or any kind of audience understanding tend to be static or live in reports. So you have to go and search for it, which is very different. There's lots of other things we can do around entertaining and immersing clients into immersing stakeholders into insights. So things like creating podcasts. Previously, podcasts would take weeks to do. Now we can do them in a very short space of time using AI. You can just plug in insight and then be able to listen to an interaction between customers on your way to work and through a commute. And it's a great way of immersing like C-suite and other stakeholders across the business. If we go to the next slide. Second insight that I mentioned is richness at scale. And we're able to do this now through the use of tech and AI. But an example that I'm showing here is to be able to get qual insights through conversational surveys. So previously you would run a survey or a study, you'd ask set questions, and you may ask open-ended questions where you let people respond as openly as possible. But now what we can do is dig deeper into their responses. We can probe at scale. So we can actually say to them, tell me more about that specific thing that you mentioned. And the other challenge previously is that analysis of qual takes such a long time. It's so expensive. But now there's all these tools that allow us to really maximize that. So things like being able to pull proof points and quotes and statistics around certain themes very quickly and easily. If we go to the next one. Okay, so when it comes to authentic participation, we're seeing a massive problem increasing here, but then also a massive opportunity to fix it. So we're seeing a rise in participant fraud, participation in taking part in research. So, and that's in qual, in quant, even in scraping. So if you take qual, we're seeing a rise in participants faking their identities or potentially like pretending to be a different role, because it's easy to do. They can use chat. Most sessions are done remotely. So what we tend to do is run sessions pre-research and video calls, and we get to know them, we ask them questions, and we can see how they respond and see if they're the right profiles. And that's a key thing, because if you don't get the right profiles, then you're really not getting the most out of your research. With quant, we're seeing a rise of up to about 60% of traffic being driven by bot and AI fraud. So it's really important to catch participants in quant and know if they're real or not, and if they've answered genuinely or not. We do things like be able to capture screenshots. They agree to have their camera on for a split second, and we know they're a real person, not a bot. We can make sure they are who they say they are and things like that. And then the final one with ratings and reviews, a massive increase in reviews being driven by AI. So if you just take 2 years ago, just take the utilities sector, 2 years ago, 6% of reviews were fake. Now up to 84% are fake. So it's a massive, massive impact. And if you just scrape and take that data, you're not getting rich insight. You're actually getting AI-driven insight. So that one actually scares me because I'm so driven by like reviews and things like that, but it has such an impact on the truth. So if we go to the next slide, I guess just finally what we see as highlights, those were the highlights, but what we see as predictions for 2025 is really building on those highlights. So we can definitely see that there'll be more transparency on the challenges of accessing authentic participants. And I think this is a good thing, because we've kind of been covering our eyes for years on this, and now we're going to get to the truth and working out how do we get authentic participation, which we've been doing a lot of over the last year or so. Second is seeing more like sleeker and engaging tools and new ways of interacting with your strategic research. It's not about creating a 100-page insight report. It's just never going to get read and it's going to live on a shelf. So all these kind of new tools to allow people across the business to use your strategic research. Third is like quicker analysis and like more cost-effective ways of carrying out research. Like for similar budgets, you get much more insight now. And so I think that's why we're seeing a rise in strategic research too. And then finally, there's definitely going to be more developments in synthetic data. And I'm sure with many trial and errors along the way. I don't think synthetic data is there yet, and we get a lot of questions about it, and there's a lot of interest in it, and there's a lot of people on the fence about it, and I think it's just going to get better. But for now, it's kind of difficult to use, and I'll leave it there. One thing I will say is we are going to give away 3 500 participant GenPop quant studies. So after this, yeah, it will go through StudioSpace, but there'll be an email sent, and whoever gets in touch with us first, that's what we'll be doing. So yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Veronica. Some really interesting thoughts there. We're almost skipping through so quickly. You need to take a breath and to reflect on some of those. I'm particularly interested. There were 2 things that you said. One was this sort of, shining a bit of a light on the participation fraud risk, which I think is, it's an honest conversation that industry needs to have, particularly with the type of stats that you've shared there. So being able to mitigate that and make sure that results are authentic, I think is so important. And then the first one that I think is also fascinating is around how we communicate the research results, particularly the strategic ones, with stakeholder groups, and tell stories in new ways. Not expect them to have to climb through reams of data, but actually thinking about the communication medium, thinking about the storytelling, thinking about how to have an impact through influence rather than just sharing the data. I think that's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that, and also for the generous offer of the studies that some of our customers here can apply for following the session. We'll be sharing more on the agency's offers to get you involved with that. Thank you very much. Let's by the way, folks, don't forget you can drop your questions in the Q&A. We'll get back to them before the end of this session, and hopefully hear firsthand from some of our industry experts and agency leaders your questions answered. So now we're going to shift gears a bit. We're going to talk about creative production. We're going to talk about the advertising area and hear from Naomi from Mr. President, who've worked with many different clients, both through StudioSpace and directly over the years. And they're really keen to leave a positive impact on the world. And they've definitely left a positive mark with the clients that I'm aware they've worked with. So Naomi, it's over to you. Love to hear your thoughts on the year and predictions for the next 12 months.
Thank you very much, Pete. So yeah, hello from Mr. President. We're an award-winning creative agency based in London. I'm in the office right now. You may notice some of our work behind me. I'm just going to take you through 3 pieces of work as our some of our highlights of this year. Starting with a campaign that we've put together for contemporary blended Scotch, the Woodsman, which are owned by a Scottish drinks company called White and Mackay. And their job was to try and craft, our job was to try and craft a whiskey campaign for people who don't really like whiskey, which is quite challenging in a category that is full of sort of craftsmanship and rolling heather and reflective sophistication. But our job was to try and get Woodsman into sort of the hands of a kind of more sort of younger drinker who isn't necessarily into whiskey and perhaps a little less sophisticated. So we position the Woodsman as a drink that is well earned, a reward for a good and honest day's hard day's graft, and an idea that really resonates with our audience of life's doers. And also is reflective of the sort of hands-on woodcraft that goes into the heart of the product. In the interest of being a creative agency, I thought we could show you a little video of the work. So I'm just going to, if it's okay, Liz, to switch into the ad to show you the fruits of our labour here.
whiskey loves a doer, so don't dilly-dally do, and do what those that do when they're done doing. The Woodsman Whiskey, well earned.
So hopefully you enjoyed that on your Thursday morning. According to System 1, our audience enjoyed it too. We earned a 4.8 star rating with that ad, and importantly, almost doubled the market share for the brand, and also gave them a brand character that, if you go on to the next slide, Liz, we've been able to sort of bring to life across lots of different channels as well. That's the first piece of work in terms of our highlights that I wanted to share with you. The second one is in a very different space. So we've covered the alcohol space. I'm now going to switch seamlessly into financial services and talk to you about a brand that we've been working with at Mr. President, who are owned by New Day. They're called I'll just wait for us to. If you press the down button, actually, Liz, it might, there we go. So there's our character come to life across different channels. And then, as I say, seamlessly switching into another category, we'll move into financial services. And yes, this brand Aqua that we've been working with, and they provide credit building cards to people that want to access credit, but do so in a way where they build their credit score. And obviously it's a low interest category, but there are lots of emotions that go with that sort of challenge. And we wanted to therefore sort of really delve into how people feel about their credit journey. So using deep neural network technology, which is facial and vocal recognition, we brought to life the emotions that people were feeling that are Aqua customers in a glowy background in what we called our kind of glow booth, and sort of translated that in the walls around them. So if you go on to the next slide, Liz, you can see some of and then in the next one again, you can see some of this work coming to life. So our technology sort of mapped the emotions that people were sharing with us while telling us about their credit journey, and then visualized it on the walls around them. So really delving into that full spectrum of emotions, from anxiety and shame to support and confidence, which again, we're really happy with our sort of System 1 score. And whilst this campaign has only recently gone live, we're already looking at sort of double the kind of category average in terms of brand building potential for this campaign. And then thirdly, I just want to show you, again, switching into a completely different space, into FMCG. We've been working with Eat Natural, which are part of the Ferrero group. They are in a category of better for you bars, which is absolutely overwhelmed by choice. So people tend to be quite repertoire loyal, but not so brand loyal. So we need to give people a reason to choose Eat Natural. So we focused in on the feel-good naturalness of the bars by creating pleasing to look at visuals that replicate the patterns that you'll see in nature. And again, if you flick down, you can see some of these examples here. We're creating distinctive and ownable brand assets for the brand, and sort of enhancing mental availability at the moment of purchase as a result. And on the next slide, you'll see a one-of-a-kind 3D execution, which we launched at Waterloo a couple of weeks ago, sort of really bringing to life this kind of kaleidoscope of ingredients that goes into the bar, and creating that real distinctiveness for the brand. So just switching gear into our predictions for the year ahead. I've gone quite punchy with these. The first one is around escapism. And obviously, it doesn't escape any of us that we're in a cost of living crisis right now, and it might feel tempting to sort of lean in with creative into sort of gritty realism and show people, you know, their reality back at them. But if any of the past recessions or anything to go by, actually feel-good emotion is sort of often proven to be more effective. So, sorry, if you flick down, Liz. Obviously, we need to avoid being tone deaf. There are certain categories where escapism might not be the best path, like, for example, my credit work that you've seen earlier in my presentation. But we are in the business of making content that people want, you know, sort of hopefully would want to watch. And although it's a harder sell, System 1 themselves have coined the phrase entertain for commercial gain, and that's absolutely something that we believe in. And you can see it paying off for campaigns like the Woodsman in terms of distinctiveness. My second prediction is around elegant personalization. This is based on my own experience. I've sort of been in strategy for a long time now, and started at Dare Digital Agency. So I've seen digital personalization evolve a lot. But I think this year is kind of the most exciting year yet. We've been working this year in strategic consultancy with lots of major brands on kind of one-on-one content. And we're seeing work that we're able to produce that's far beyond sort of just name dropping and targeting, but instead using data and insight to provide enriched experiences that are based on interest, location, time, and existing experience. So really what I mean by this is tailoring, not just targeting, and the power of saying the right thing at the right time. Thirdly, perhaps my most controversial, is what I expect to see around a stall in AI video generation. Obviously, Jeff mentioned AI earlier. I'm sure it's a hot topic right now for everybody. And I'm a big fan of using AI tools in my work. In this presentation, I've used ChatGPT, help with titles. I've used Midjourney with images. And I've even generated a podcast from lots of my research that I put into this to listen through Google Notebook LM. But like, make no mistake, AI is anything but effortless, especially when it comes to video. OpenAI's Sora has kind of faced a lot of ongoing delays and is yet to come out in sort of full force. And I've also got a great story, which you can ask me about in the questions if you're interested, around how AI video generation works in a kind of production sense. Not to mention prompts and also the post-production that goes into things. I'm sure you've all seen the Coca-Cola ad. I've got my own view on that as well, which I'm happy to talk through in the questions if you're interested. Point here is I don't think it's going to go away, but I don't think it's going to explode in the same way that some people are suggesting. And I'm going to leave it there, but just to say that we are offering a presidential primary session to anyone that's interested. So that's an exploratory call or meeting without a financial commitment to get our initial hot take on challenges that you may have as a client. So if you're interested, get in touch with us and we'll let you know more about that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Naomi. Loads and loads to think about there, from mapping the emotions of customers and playing them back through to that massive wall of images at Waterloo Station. It's very familiar. It's good to see that. Love the idea. I think you've earned a woodsman through the last few minutes. So thanks for sharing that. We look forward to answering some more questions in a few moments. But last but not least, in terms of our agency lineup, we've got social media specialist Nonsensical. Ollie is going to speak to us. They're legends when it comes to TikTok in particular. Easy for me to say. And we can't get enough of the work that they're doing among other brands at HSBC. But we know that Ollie is going to share quite an interesting set of insights about what's going on at the moment. Always looking forward. So Ollie, what's going on this year and your predictions for 2025?
Yes, of course. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for having us along. If you want to go to the next slide, Liz. So as we said, we kind of pivoted to TikTok about 4 years ago. So we were very early into the platform. We saw it as really the only platform that was truly innovating when it comes to kind of social and entertainment. But I think interestingly, TikTok will say themselves that their competitors are Netflix, Google, and Amazon rather than the Meta platforms. The reason for that is that the average time spent on TikTok per user per day is 94 minutes. So they've definitely got the attention of not just Gen Z or Gen A, because the average age of a TikTok user is now actually 33. A lot of those people, I imagine, were going on to see what their kids are up to and then invariably get hooked, as we all do. And another crazy stat is the average person will swipe the length of the Eiffel Tower every day on TikTok. So there is a whole host of content that is going through the platform. And I think this year, really what we've seen is some brands truly embrace social and actually what it means and how to be a good brand organically on the platform. And then we still see those brands that literally make a TV ad, shove it into 9:16 and whack it on TikTok and hope for the best. Not pointing at Jaguar as exactly what they did yesterday, unfortunately. But what we've seen, if you go to the next slide, I've just picked out 4 examples of some clients that we work with and just where we see this kind of trend taking place through this year, and then obviously I'll talk about next year. So SEMrush is a great example of this. They're really using kind of employee generated content, but it's really important that they're being super relatable to their target audience. They don't once talk about their own product in their content. It's all about relating to digital marketers. We've managed to create a character called Chris. They actually flew Chris out to Amsterdam to their conference last week. And what you're starting to see is that these personalities that you're growing on social are now kind of moving into the real life. Some of these videos just really showcase exactly what it means to be a digital marketer. And as soon as you see that content on your feed, it just speaks to you. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, we'll let you decide. The other big thing that we've done with SEMrush this year is the rise of B2B influencers. Everyone obviously thinks that B2C is the easy play, which makes sense. The likes of Gymshark built their business on it. But actually delving into the world of B2B influencers on TikTok, but also on LinkedIn is what we're seeing much more of. And I can see that continue to grow through next year. So next slide. The next one is Barber, and they are fully embracing the style of creative for TikTok, which we absolutely love. It's very human-led, it's very presenter-led, it's very authentic and native in the way that it's shot on a mobile phone, it's quick cut. And that really, for me, is a good sign of a brand that are fully embracing what social is all about. Again, you would expect previously that they'd hire a huge video production agency, and some of these videos would cost tens of thousands to produce, whereas actually they understand now that you can get your phone out and you can create and make it look super native. So just these videos combined have got over about 350,000 views organically. And literally we rocked up with a smartphone and created it within half a day. So I think the way that production is changing and the way that TikTok has made content so much more accessible is brilliant. There's not always need for it, but if you are going to be operating on social, whether that be through YouTube Shorts, Reels, or TikTok, then being native to the platform is just the most important thing that you can do. The competition on the platform is huge, with 94 minutes being spent on average per day. So you've got to make sure your videos really stand out. The next one is probably the one that we're most proud of. It is the most bizarre, but I think what this shows through 2024 is the fact that small businesses can really steal a march. So this is our favorites, Urban Tandoor. They are an independent curry house in Bristol, but they are now world famous on TikTok. They have people flying from all over the globe just to go and visit their small restaurant on Small Street in Bristol. But this, again, is very much that personality being led through. We make parody songs about curry. We jumped on the man in finance trend. So this is all about being slightly unhinged, slightly sassy, but being quick to create and jumping on trends. So Bargy Girl obviously came out when the Barbie movie was on. We also did Murder at the Tandoor when Murder on the Dance Floor was trending through the Netflix film. So what this is showing is if you're quick, if you're slightly unhinged. I mean, some other great examples is the RSPB, absolutely incredible with their Bird of the Week content is unbelievable. Nutter Butter is just absolutely stealing TikTok now with their completely unhinged approach. So you've got to make sure it's brand safe. But what this shows is that small brands can massively generate an impact. And if you don't believe me, just go to Bewdley and go into the merchant Chippy shop and go and see Chippy Diva, who is literally taking over the TikTok feeds right now. Next slide. So this one is the Works. And again, we were really pleased to have won the TikTok Ad Awards with our work with the Works this year. And again, it's very much delving into BookTok. BookTok is a huge space on TikTok, and they've kind of gone all in at creating content that resonates with their customers. They're actually creators, but pretending to be employees. But they're building this huge presence on the platform with really native content and ultimately delivering fantastic results. So my big thing for TikTok, and this is where I find it most interesting, is that they've successfully merged Amazon through e-commerce, Instagram and Netflix for entertainment, and discoverability of Google into one app. Now that makes it ridiculously complicated to really win on the platform unless you're fully all in. So my kind of thoughts for 2025 on the next slide is really the bigger rise of employee generated content. What we're seeing, not just from a recruitment and personal brand perspective, is the fact that you can build a personality within your organization. Look at the likes of Sheer Lux and Lux Collective, who are doing this incredibly well. TikTok Shop is only going to get bigger. I looked this morning, and the beauty category, they've sold £18 million worth of stuff in the last 30 days alone on TikTok Shop. And that is where people are now going to buy, whether it's for amazing discounts, but not always, because Lux Collective sold a £10,000 handbag on a live stream the other day. And if you didn't know, P. Louise made 2 million quid from a 24-hour live stream on TikTok Shop just earlier this year. So through 2025, as brands work out how the hell they can sell on a new marketplace and the spaghetti architecture of linking their e-commerce platforms into TikTok Shop and work out distribution. But for me, that is going to be a huge growth area this year. I also think the other play is not that it's going to be not TikTok native, but I think higher production content will start to be seen on the platform. I completely agree. I think AI content on social is a big no-no, particularly as you have to mark that it is AI generated. And what do we always say? People buy from people, and people go to TikTok and other platforms because of its authentic nature. So the more that you can get people in your content, the better. But that doesn't mean you just have to get your phone out and be slightly unhinged. There is definitely ways of where people are going to the platform for education and to learn. And you're seeing a big rise in the likes of podcast styles, which do look really quite well produced. And then finally, Jeff, again, you mentioned it earlier, but the rise of TikTok search. Some stats from TikTok just the other day is that 23% of people will open the search bar within 30 seconds of opening TikTok. So you can start to see the intent of why people are going to the platform, not just for escapism and entertainment, but definitely to learn and get kind of trusted reviews through video format. The other big thing that's coming in 2025 is search-based ads. So you can currently put your adverts within search results, but it's going to change to be more of the PPC model where you target keywords. They're testing it in the US already. It's coming to the UK super soon. And what that's going to mean is that brands are going to have to get even better at creating content to appear within the multiple places that your content can appear, whether that's in search and how you're optimizing the opening first 2 seconds of your creative to get people to click. So there is going to be huge shifts in the way that you have to curate your content on TikTok to work within these multiple different places that your content can appear. But yeah, we're obviously very bullish on the platform and see huge success. And it's great to see brands like HSBC, Barber, SEMrush really investing in the platform this year, and it's only going to continue through 2025. And that is it from me. What I will say is we host monthly webinars on all aspects of TikTok. We've just released our latest one that's going to be on TikTok Shop. It's going to be on Tuesday. You can sign up through our LinkedIn page. But yeah, monthly webinars. If you're interested in the space, then we produce a lot of great content. And if you go to our website, you can look back through recordings from our previous ones as well.
Superb, Ollie. Thank you so much. Tons to think about there. Love the SME examples. You know, going from a local restaurant to a global phenomenon in hours, and then you can imagine how TikTok Shop together with small brands is just going to, you know, change the rules when it comes to commerce. Let's turn it over to questions. We've got some interesting stuff already on the chat. Please add to that if you'd like to, folks. We are going to wrap up in about 5 minutes though, so it's going to be rapid fire questions and answers. I'm going to start, Veronica, with you. You kind of invited it yourself, but tell us about AI video generation and what do you think about that Coca-Cola ad?
I think that might be one for me, actually.
Oh, sorry, sorry, Naomi. No, completely right. Naomi, tell us about the AI video generation and your own views on the Coca-Cola ad.
Well, I think obviously the Coca-Cola one, we can't ignore the fact that tested really well with like actual consumers. You know, via System 1, there's a lot about that. But I do think they are sort of riding on the coattails of a lot of creative consistency that they've built over the years. And it also totally makes sense of their magic positioning. Not many brands could get away with, you know, some of the inconsistencies and the futuristic Gen I imagery, and some of the mistakes are actually the charm in that. So I think, you know, it's a little bit of an anomaly in general. The amount of legwork that goes into producing AI generated video is massively sort of underplayed in all the excitement about the possibility. There was a video created by a Canadian outfit called Shy Kids, called Balloon Head. It's 81 seconds long, and they had about 5,000 video clips to review. And they sort of openly talk about the amount of effort that went into that review process, the prompting, the post-production, production, like it's an enormous undertaking to produce something that you know, that looks actually, you know, looks really, really sort of effortless, but is anything but.
Good stuff. Thanks, Naomi. All right, Jeff, here's one for you. You talked a bit about different platforms and the idea of sort of allocating your budget across. If you had £1 to invest in a business, Jeff, how would you spread that budget in 2025 across the different media channels and platforms?
£1 a bit generous, isn't it? I think.
All right, give you 100 then.
Well, here we go. Now we're talking. No, I think to be honest with you, I think the thing that most people don't do is invest properly in the strategy in the first place. So it's a bit of a fob off answer, but I'd spend £1 on the strategy to tell me how to spend the next £1, because it's in our world in particular in SEOs, people buy very, very tactically. So they'll buy one part of SEO, or you know, they'll come in because they've got a very specific need. But as we've discussed, and Ollie's points there around, you know, how quickly people open up TikTok, understanding where the demand is trying to be satisfied, where people are going to satisfy that demand, is not just about Google. It's not just you've got to look at these things really holistically. So I would spend the £1 on getting that bit right, because it would save so much money in the future if you know exactly why you're doing the things you're doing.
I think that's very wise, mate, and it ties in with that kind of shift towards more strategic projects at the moment that we're seeing. Is people are taking a bit of time to think about it and then get their act together before execution. So that sounds good. Ollie, bit of a random question. A really nice summary that you gave, including one of the trends around B2B. All right. So any great examples of the leading influencers from a B2B perspective, or a few examples that you could share with us?
Yeah, I mean, so we work with the iconic Spudman, if anyone knows of his Jackie Potato Cart in Tamworth. So we have a client that sells recycled takeaway packaging, and we've worked with Spudman since he had 200,000 followers. He's now on about 3 million, I think, from last look. And just subtly or seamlessly integrating your product into their creative is really powerful. The SEMrush one in particular, there are loads of people talking about digital marketing within the space of likes of LinkedIn and TikTok. We also work with a boiler company, and it's incredible to see how many other boiler installers are on TikTok talking about their journey. And the good thing that you can do on TikTok is you can get the creator or influencer to produce the content, post it on their channels, but then also enable you to put media spend behind it. So you can turn what is more traditionally a brand activation into something that's much more tangible in terms of those conversion metrics. So that's where we're seeing big success in the B2B space.
Good stuff, and I love that idea about the staff and the team, and it being much more authentic once you're in that community already. Veronica, this question is actually for you. Are you able to share some examples? Never mind giving the company names, but what kind of strategic projects are you starting to wrestle with? What kind of questions are people asking that may be new for this year?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is around like, how do we understand like new audiences? How do we how do we understand audiences that we currently don't have, and how can we do that effectively, like cost effectively, time effectively? How can we do things faster with like getting like rapid insight to feed in? Like, one of the things for us is also about that, how do you have ongoing conversations with audiences versus just doing like a massive one-off piece? So having that like ongoing conversation, so that you might get some micro audience insight, then get so that's a big thing. And also new ways of doing brand tracking is a big thing as well, that we've come across, like understanding brand holistically and being able to track that like holistic view versus just the traditional sense.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm sorry, folks, but we're out of time. So I'm afraid time to move on. What I'd like to do is to just wrap it up. Thank our audience very much indeed. Each one of the agencies, by the way, has sort of offered up an exclusive offer for you, our clients. So we'll be sharing that on the email follow-up. You'll get an email with the replay and the link. So obviously you can share that with some of your colleagues. We're going to be continuing to share this insight on our 2024 annual report. And so we're going to incorporate some of these themes and discussions into the trends for the future. And in the meantime, if you'd like to chat about any of this that you're looking for support with, or any of the themes that come out today, please do get in touch with us. But one last thank you to our wonderful panel. Thanks for joining today, and goodbye. Have a great Thursday.